Welcome to Bob's Radio Cafeteria. You can find me Facebook.com/Bob's Radio Cafeteria, YouTube.com/The Clarences, and of course Ralph Tycho's Comfortably Zone Radio Network, where his shows are, and of course my good friend Fred Lazarus with his Durfcast. And my guest this week is the one, the only Bobby Hart. Bobby, are you there?
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Everything is good today. Thank you.
Well, first of all, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you or see what you got going on?
Well, the website is bobbyhart.com. That's easy, and then the Facebook page is Bobby Hart, and Psychedelic Bubblegum, which is the name of my book, is another site, and then there's the official Boyce and Hart site that Tommy's widow Caroline takes care of. So there's plenty of places to look for me.
Yeah, and it's very exciting. And you also have you just put out something very exciting just recently. You want to tell the folks about that?
Well, maybe you're talking about the CD. I'm not sure.
Yes, of course.
CD is a record that I made, an album that I made in 1978, and it never saw the light of day in the States. It came out in a few European countries, but a small reissue label in London found it. Ian Lee and his partner Glenn found the somewhere in the archives somewhere, and they dug up an old vinyl version of it, and they said this needs to come out. So
I
licensed it to them, and they, for the first time, put it on CD, and they're selling it internationally via Amazon.
That's really. How does that feel? Like, was it something that you knew, or did they contact you and say, "Hey, by the way, we have this. We want to put out your record"? Or?
Yes, that's what happened. They dug it up and said this needs to be heard, and so it was. It's a record that I'm proud of, but it's also a period of time that is very different than where my head is today, and also my voice, for that matter. I was singing. It was really a urban R&B kind of a record, but the cuts are good, and I dug up some of the original recording that we had done that didn't make it on the original configuration. So we have bonus tracks, and it's getting good response. In fact, the guitar player on the record, his name is Vince Megna, M-E-G-N-A, and he's been a friend of mine, and we played in clubs and around in Vegas and so on back in the day. And so I sent him a copy when it came out, and he said, "Wow, this sounds really good." And he said, "Hurt So Bad just sounds timeless, your version of it. It's not like any of the other ones that were out." Right. I don't know if you know the song, but
of course, yeah.
It was top 10 three times, once by Little Anthony in 65, 3 different decades, 65, and then 70 was the Letterman, and then Linda Ronstadt in 1980.
And of course, yeah, Linda's was probably the version that people are most familiar with.
Yeah,
that
except for the old codgers like us. Talking about myself, of course.
Of course not. You were, yeah, of course.
So he said, we need to make a. He said, I do video. He gave up being a musician as his first vocation, and he went to law school, and now he's one of the top lemon law lawyers in the country. So he does these videos just for fun, these humorous videos, and he puts them up. So he said, I'd like to make a video for Hurt So Bad. So he hired this great professional crew of actors and flew them in from New York. He's in Milwaukee, and videographer and director. And so they put together this video that goes with Hurt So Bad. And
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, you posted it on Facebook. It was on Facebook. It was really cool.
And I guess that's the easiest place to look at it. Look on my site for it. It's been getting about 1,000 views a week, and he's just starting putting it out there. So,
how does it feel to have like a song that was written so many years ago, and here it is, like it's coming out again? Is it like visiting an old friend?
Yeah, it's kind of like the old friend that wouldn't go away. It just keeps bouncing back, and of course I'm very, very grateful for it, because who would have thought when Teddy Randazzo and Bobby Weinstein and I wrote this song on our 1-hour break in Vegas at a kind of cold, damp, dark, deserted ballroom in one of the ballrooms in the Thunderbird Hotel in Las Vegas between sets. we would work. It was a Teddy Randazzo show, and Bobby and I were two of the Dazzlers, the background singers. It would kind of like a Joey D and the Starlighters kind of a group.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so he said, he was producing Little Anthony at the time, and they'd just come off two big hits. And he said, Going Out of My Head is just falling off the charts, and we need a new single. So let's go upstairs and write a song on the break, on the hour break. We'd be playing. We'd start at midnight and go to 7 in the morning. So every other hour we'd play a show. So we went up, and in that time we wrote this song, never even considering that it would go top 10 3 different times in 3 different decades.
How did the title come up? Like, did somebody go like, "I got an idea for a title," or did the music come first, or what was the idea?
Well, Teddy was at the piano, and because he's a brilliant concert-trained musician and arranger, and so he was playing some chords, and we were throwing titles out, and Bobby Weinstein threw out "Hurt So Bad" as a title. Teddy said, "Okay, I like that," so we started playing with that. They were used to writing together. Bobby was Teddy's main writing partner, and I was a new kid on the block, so I was trying to contribute best I could. And when we got to the end of the first chorus, I don't think I had contributed that much, but I threw out "Like Needles and Pins," which was another rhyme that really wasn't necessary because we were already headed back into the second verse.
Right.
But Teddy liked it, and he said, so he created a little musical interlude to make it fit.
Oh, that's cool.
And from then on, I had a little confidence, and I jumped in, and we finished the thing in the 45 minutes or so we were up there.
Were you writing songs up by that time, or is this what really kind of like got into you? Like, I'm going to start really getting into writing songs.
No, I've been trying. I came to Los Angeles, 18 years old, $50 in my pocket to go to disc jockey school because I wanted to be in something to do with music, but pretty shy. Didn't even consider being an artist. But I soon got sidetracked when I got here and dropped out of disc jockey school and started trying to be a singer. And I got a record deal within 3 months.
Wow.
But the deal was they said, look, we only want people that have their own material, so go write some songs. So I kind of got into it because I had to. Mm-hmm. But it took me 6 years of plugging away and learning my craft and getting better before I had any success. But before Hurt So Bad came out, Tommy Boyce and I had teamed up, and we had our first hits in New York. With Jay and the Americans, Come a Little Bit Closer, and then...
Oh, of course, yes, that's right.
A Chubby Checker record and another chart record by the Sapphires, so we got our feet wet there.
He also did Dr. Heartache, too,
Dr.
right?
Heartache, that's an obscure title for you to remember. That is a wild one.
I love music, so...
Yeah. Well, it was actually recorded by Tommy Sands.
Tommy Sands, yeah.
I don't know, 1960 or something like that, or 62 maybe.
What was that like? Like, so when you first saw your record, first song recorded, what was? I mean, obviously you were excited, but was it like? Can you put into words in your experience what it was like?
Well, you mentioned Dr. Heartache, and
yeah.
So Tommy and I were just friends, and he was writing on his own, trying to do the same thing I was trying to do, and I was writing. Mm-hmm. But he stopped by the apartment one day in Hollywood, and he said, "You've been writing anything?" And I played him Dr. Heartache, and I believe that was a turning point when Tommy Boyce saw me as almost an equal, that I could make it was really a good song, and he loved it. So we started to write a little bit. Then he got the break to go to New York to write for a publisher, and I soon followed him. Well, it was a couple of years later. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a turning point, and also the fact that it did hit the charts. It went to up in the 90s somewhere and then fell off, but at least it was my first chart record.
That's
was
so
a big
cool.
Point.
Where did you get the title from? Was it is another one that just came into your head, or just? Yeah,
it kind of did, and then then I used a lot of other titles from hit songs in the verse. A song about a guy that can fix your heartache. Dr. Heartache.
Yeah.
So,
and of course it was a teen idol, so of course the girls swooned for that.
So got a little office on Lonely Street. Well, that was a hit by Andy Williams. Floor Heartbreak Hotel, of course that was Elvis. You Can Try Everybody in Lonesome Town, that was Ricky Nelson. But no, there's no one going to get you well like Dr. Heartache.
So cool. I love it. Now, how about Come a Little Bit Closer? Could you? Because it's such it's just a fantastic song. It's just so catchy. It's such a wonderful song. And
Thanks.
oh, you're more welcome. I've been enjoying listening to it all these years. Can you tell me a little bit about what was the songwriting process of that one?
Yeah, my memoir came out last year called Psychedelic Bubblegum, and I devote a whole chapter in detail about how I wrote or co-wrote Come a Little Bit Closer, but I'll give you a little thumbnail sketch. Yeah,
just so people can. Remember, it's a great book, Psychedelic Bubblegum. Make sure to check that book out. But here's a little Cliff Notes version of the...
Yeah, right. Well, as I say, I followed Tommy to New York. By the time I got there, he'd been there long enough to have made some friends and contacts in the music business, and one of them was a fellow that we ran into at 1650 Broadway. In those days, the whole music business was in either the Brill Building, which was 1619, or the other building, 1650. And we had an appointment, but in the elevator we ran into Wes Farrell, and Tommy introduced me.
Wow.
And so he said, I'm going down tomorrow night to taking the train up to Philly and to play some songs for Chubby. You got anything? And so as the elevator was closing, we said, hey, we'll try to come up with something, Wes. And that's kind of how Tommy and I always were. I often say we were the kind of the short order cooks of music, songwriting. So we went back to my little flop house room and wrote something called Lazy Elsie Molly, and we went back and played it for Wes. And of all the songs that Wes took to Philly, Chubby selected it for his next
single. He did that one.
So we had that contact with Wes, and then when Wes found out that Jay and the Americans were coming up to record in a few days, he asked Tommy and I if the three of us could write something for Jay. So that's what we did. After Wes ran this publishing company, but he also was a writer, and he'd had a few hits by then, including Hang On Sloopy and Boys, which later the Beatles recorded.
Right. Wow.
So we went up after closing time and started kicking around the idea of doing a song kind of inspired by the Marty Robbins country record called El Paso, a little story about the being in a little border town in Mexico, only doing it in the genre of a pop than country. So it was a whole lot of fun because there's a lot of humor in that record. For those of you who don't know it, there's the three main characters are the singer, and then there's the bad man who's Jose, whose girlfriend is trying to come on to the singer in this little cafe. So, and then how when Bad Man Jose comes back into the scene, singer kind of runs for his life. But there's a lot of humor in it, and it was a lot of fun to write, and that was our first top 10 record.
It was huge one for you. And then
I think Jay and the Americans had something like 22 chart records, and that was the biggest one.
That's the one they're most associated with, and how cool is that? Is that you had something to do with that?
Yeah.
And now now you're here. You are. You've got this huge hit, top 5 hit. Now I'm sure the record company, everybody's like onto you guys, like, okay, write more of this stuff, more hits, please. Correct?
Well, what happened? It was the springboard to an offer by Donald Kirshner to sign with Screen Gems Columbia Music. Actually, it was Nevins Kirshner Music that had just been sold to Columbia Pictures.
So this is when then you signed to Screen Gems.
Then
Gotcha.
we signed with Screen Gems and moved back to the West Coast where where Tommy was raised and where I had transplanted myself to. And then
because you're originally from Phoenix, yes.
Yeah, I was from Phoenix. So that was a big break because, well, for two reasons. Because having a music publisher, being signed to a music publisher who owned a television studio and a movie studio, gave us a lot of opportunities to get songs in TV and movies. And that's what happened. They would send us out on these appointments, like, for instance, people who were getting ready to start a new soap opera called Days of Our Lives. And
wow.
The opportunity to write that theme song that's been on the air for 50 years, 5 times a week.
Just like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives.
Just like McDonald Carey.
Thank you, Hans. That's a compliment. Wow. And I wasn't even trying.
Well, I know your audience probably has no idea who MacDonald Carey was or is, but he was a big, very popular movie star and the star of Days of Our Lives when they first started.
Yes, and the famous...
Who recited that famous line about the hourglass.
That's so cool, and how what a privilege. I mean, they use that for so many. Iconic. There you go, another iconic. And so this is what led you guys into, of course, working with the Monkees, and then writing for the Monkees, I should say.
Exactly, writing and producing. We were one of those meetings that we took over in the Columbia lot and convinced the two producers of this upcoming show. They had an idea for a show, and they told us it's going to be American Beatles on television, basically based visually based on Help and Hard Day's Night.
Hard Day's Night, yes.
And we need 3 songs for the pilot, and also once the guys are cast, we want to have them out touring and actually recording. So we convinced them we were their guys and worked on the project for almost a year before the 4 actors were hired. And then produced their first records. And
Last Train to Clarksville, which is, of course, one of the most famous pop songs of all time. And is it true that song is about a Vietnam guy going to Vietnam? I've always heard that.
Yeah, it's true, but it was subtle.
Subtle, very subtle.
Couldn't write a blatant war protest song.
No.
And have it on network television, and we couldn't have a war protest song.
No, of course not.
In an album that was aimed at teens and preteens, So
you can't.
So we did it very subtly, but it is about a guy who was going off, being shipped out the next day, and didn't know if he would ever come back alive.
I've always said that Mickey Dolenz is one of the greatest pop voices. I've always loved his voice.
I agree with you.
Just a great singer, and I'm sure when you heard your songs being sung by him,
yep.
You probably like, oh yeah, this guy's got it right here.
We did. We thought we had died and gone to heaven because it was our first big assignment as record producers. So when we heard Mickey's voice and we heard Davey's voice, we thought we'd hit the double jackpot because Davey had that little. He was for the times. He had that Beatlesque sound, being from Manchester, and even without sounding like one of the Beatles. And then Mickey was just a wonderful surprise.
Oh, what a great! And the songs you wrote, "The Last Train to Clarksville," "I Want to Be Free," "She," "I'm Not Your Stepping Stone," "Valerie." Was Valerie a song that you wrote? Is that based on anybody, or is that just somebody that you just had the title? You or Tommy came up with the title?
That song was based on pure terror.
What?
Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes again.
Please, just the Cliff Notes.
I was playing clubs at that time while we were producing records, but at night times I'd be playing clubs with my band, the Candy Store Prophets, and I got in late, of course. We played till 2, and I'd get in at 3 or 4 in the morning. So Tommy wakes me up early one morning and tries, through my grogginess, to explain to me that Donnie Kirshner, who was the music supervisor of the Monkees, had called and mentioned to Tommy that for the next single, he thought maybe the title should be A Girl's Name. So Tommy, being the consummate salesman that he always was, without missing a beat, he said, "I can't believe you said that, Donnie. Bobby and I wrote a song last night, and its Girl's Name is the title." So Donnie said, "Oh, I can't wait to hear it. Come over and play it." And Tommy says, "Well, Bobby gets in late, but I'll try to get him up at 11 and try to be there by 12."
Right.
So he wakes me up, get in the shower, and he's explaining to me, and I'm realizing that we have to go in an hour and into a place that's about a half hour away and play Donnie Kirshner, the head of our publishing company, a song that we hadn't written yet. So I get behind the wheel. Tommy gets in the back seat with his guitar. He's strumming. He's got a few chords and yelling at me to throw out girls' names. And as I went through the Rolodex list of my mind, when I got to Valerie, he said, "Okay, let's work with that one." So we pull up in front of Donnie's rented house in Truesdale, and we go in there with nothing more than 3 chords and a title and a one-word name, Valerie. And so Donnie invites his wife into the living room and to hear it, and Tommy jumps up on the coffee table and starts selling the song by playing the chords and singing Valerie. I love her, Valerie. And then there's a little verse that goes in here, and then it goes, at the end, they were both applauding, and he said, "This is their next single. Go in the studio and record this."
Oh, it's so rad.
So
it's such a great
finished
song.
It up in about a half hour, and recorded it. But the end of the story is that it couldn't come out because right then is when the Monkees pulled their power coup and got Donnie Kirshner fired, and the edict was that no Monkee records could be released that were not produced by the Monkees.
Oh, this is around headquarters, around...
exactly. Headquarters came out. Valerie sat on the shelf for a year and a half. Finally, Lester Sill, who took Donnie's place, called Tommy and him into his office one day and said, "There's a lot of songs in the can, but none of them sound like hits to me. I know Valerie's a hit. Here's my proposal. Go back in the studio, same musicians, same arrangement, make it sound exactly like the first one, only this time you don't take producer's credit, and that'll be the next single." So that's what happened.
Oh, so there was an original version, and then there was the version that we all know.
On one of the Lino Missing Links albums, you'll be able to hear both.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. That is out there. Because there's so much stuff that came out that you almost get. Now, you mentioned your band. Now, tell us about the band that you had at the time. What was that like, having the band and then having to do songwriting? And were you writing songs for your band as well?
Yeah, the band was Jerry McGee on the guitar and Larry Taylor, who later was a founding member of Canned Heat.
Yeah.
Jerry McGee was a great guitar player. And they were Teddy Randazzo's backup band, and that's where I met them in Vegas when I joined the group. And then when that kind of disbanded, they moved back to L.A. just at the time when we got the Monkees project. So before that, we had been playing clubs, and yes, we'd been playing some of the original Boyce and Hart songs in our set, and we gave ourselves the name Candy Store Prophets and thinking we'd get a record deal. But then we got the Monkees opportunity. So we decided instead of using the regular LA studio musicians, we would use a band, and it would sound like a real band, because this was a band I had played with for a couple of years, and Tommy Boyce had even been a part of it at one time. So I think that part of the original Monkees sound, the reason it sounds authentic and sounds like a real band, even though it wasn't them playing on the first albums, I think that's what sets it apart a little bit, because it doesn't sound like every other record that was being made in L.A. during that year.
By the Wrecking Crew and all that stuff, right?
We didn't call them the Wrecking Crew, but we used Hal Blaine and those guys on a lot of other things that we did. But we decided for the Monkees project, we wanted to sound when they're on television and they're playing this stuff, we wanted to sound or lip sync into it.
So are they the ones that you had that big hit in '68? I Wonder What She's Doing Tonight. Are they playing on that one too?
Yes, they became the Boyce and Hart band after the Monkees decided they wanted to produce themselves. Then that was an opportunity for Tommy and I to accept one of the label offers we had to become artists. So we went to A&M, and the Kind of Store Prophets then became the Boyce and Hart band.
And then you guys went on, and you were on you wrote songs for different shows like Bewitched and I Dream a Genie, and
we guest starred in those shows because. In my book, Psychedelic Bubblegum, I talk about how we got the chance to renegotiate our contract with Screen Gems Columbia as a publishing company, and they gave us a development deal to have our own television sitcom, which they were developing for the fall of 1970. So Screen Gems at that point put us on as guest stars on all of the sitcoms that they had running at that time, Flying Nun and Bewitched.
Which is probably really a cool experience. And then you were on Soupy Sales show, and
Soupy Sales did a special, and they asked us to come on as one of the guests. That was fun. And we did probably as much television as anybody at that time, because that was becoming the medium to promote records, even rivaling radio, which of course radio was the thing.
How about you did a film? You did music for a film called Unholy Rollers from 1972. How did that come about?
I was dating a girl named Claudia Jennings, and she was an actress and had done a ton of movies, but she got this project to star in a movie called Unholy Rollers as the leader of a roller derby team. And the director asked me if I would do the music, but there was absolutely there was no budget. He gave me $1,000 to score the whole film.
Right.
So what I did was I called a friend of mine who managed a retro group called Louie and the Rockets, and I said, if you guys want to come into L.A. and be the recording band for this project, we'll do a bunch of oldies and Chuck Berry tunes and whatever. And I gave the $1,000 to the publishing company that owned all the songs. So I got them to do. I paid for the studio time out of pocket, gave the $1,000 to the publisher, and Louie and the Rockets performed the songs in return for having a scene in the movie. So that's how I put that together. And then Danny Jansen, who I was writing with exclusively at that time, and I decided we'd write a theme song, and that's what we did.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, how did you? Now, so you're moving along, and you get together with Mickey Dolenz and Davy Jones as Dolenz, Jones, Boyce, and Hart. Of course, a lot of this is covered in the book, but Cliff Notes version, of course.
Yeah.
It's always hard when I interview people and they have books, and I'm like, I don't want to give away too much.
It's okay because it's in detail and it's in living color describing the scene, so you feel like you're there when you're reading it, and so it's a different experience. And if you're not a reader, you can go on Amazon and get the audio download the audio version. And I narrate the whole thing, and Mickey.
Oh, that's cool. What was that like?
Who wrote the foreword narrates the foreword for me, so it's very nice.
What was that like? Like reading, like how do they do that? The book, you basically go in for a day, and
I had never done it. I have a little recording studio in my house, and my guy who does the engineering came over and he says, "You don't want me sitting here. Well, it's going to take you weeks and months to do this." So he just set it up for me and showed me how to punch in and punch out. So I sat there for. I'm sure it took 6 weeks, and just whenever I would get time, every day I would put an hour or two in on it and read the book through. And it was kind of a fun experience, actually.
It's so cool because I always wonder, like, how long does it take for people to do stuff like that? But you had the luxury of doing it on your own time. You didn't have to go to a studio or anything like that.
It made it a lot easier, and it was very sweet when Mickey said, "Yeah, I'll come up and sing and read the forward for you."
Such an awesome. Well, you guys helped each other basically.
Yeah. And
you were nominated for an Oscar.
Yes.
That's a very cool thing. Not a lot of people can say that in your life, that they've been nominated for Oscar. It was for Over You for the movie Tender Mercies.
Remember that record with the movie with Robert Duvall?
Yeah. So that's what I was wondering. Like, how did you? What did you? When that happened, were you like what? Or were you like, oh wow?
We were oh wow because we had my writing partner Austin Roberts was signed to Screen Gems. I had long since left Screen Gems and was doing my own publishing, but so we wrote the song for the movie and it came out, and then I got a call at the recording studio where I was doing demos one day at MCA Records in Universal City, and it was Lester Sill at Screen Gems Publishing, and he said, I got a call from Betty Buckley.
The actress. Yeah,
the actress, and he said she's talking about she knows some people on the nominating committee in this category for Best Song in a Motion Picture, but the song, we didn't realize, but the song has to be submitted either by the publisher or somebody, and we never submitted it, and it might be too late. But he said, I'm going to have Betty Buckley call you tonight and try to figure it out. So she called. I didn't realize it until I was doing research for the book that at the time she was starring in Cats on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
So I said in the book she might have been calling from backstage. So she said, nobody submitted it. And I said, I don't know what you're talking about, submitted it. So she explained it to me slowly and like I was a third grader. And said, if you want to have your song considered, but in this category, somebody has to submit it for consideration. So the next morning, Lester Sell had somebody hand-delivered a letter to the Academy with an apology and asking if we could be considered, even the time limit was up. And they did. Of course, we didn't know until when they announced, like everybody else, that morning, and there sure it was, best song in a motion picture from 10 years.
So cool! Wow. So were you able to go to the award ceremony?
Sure. If you're nominated, you get to go.
Oh, that's so cool! Wow.
It was a cool evening just to be there watching all these stars around you in all the different areas and just soaking it all in.
Was there a moment where you saw somebody and you were like, "Oh my God, this is really cool"?
Oh, there were people all around us. I can't tell you who they were at the moment, but
yeah.
we were awed at every turn. And one thing that I kind of always kicked myself for was I was told that if once you're nominated, then you can apply for membership in the Academy. But I never did that, and I probably could have gone to a lot more of them if I had done that.
Oh, well, you had that one time, and not a lot of people can say they've done that.
That's true. And the Golden Globes that year as well, which was even more fun because you get to sit at a table with all the cast.
Oh, that's cool. So you got to sit with Robert Duvall and all that?
And Robert and his wife, and then he brought, as their guest, he brought Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash.
Wow.
And Betty Buckley was there. She sang that night. She sang the song. And Tess Harper, who was the female lead. So it was really a fun night.
Wow. And did you already know Johnny at all? Or
I had met him when I first came to Hollywood at 18.
Oh.
The manager that I signed with was in a little complex called Crossroads of the World, and Johnny had a small office right next door, so I would see him from time to time. And so I reminded him that night at the Beverly Hilton that we had met, and all those years back when we were both standing at the crossroads of the world.
So cool. How about you also did music for cartoons like Scooby-Doo and Josie and the Pussycats? Was that part of the same thing? Like it was you and Tommy wrote the music, and then like you had the Candy Store Prophets, like, or was it you just wrote the music?
No, this was at a period when Tommy decided not to quit the business for a while. He just dropped out. It was
okay.
Very hectic time for us during the Boyce and Hart days. You can imagine how.
Yeah.
Pulled in all different directions, writing for the Monkees, writing for ourselves, being on television, radio, and
right, of course,
concerts around the country. So Tommy dropped out, and I paired up with Danny Jansen. And Danny had a history with Hanna-Barbera and had done Scooby-Doo and a few others. So he asked me to come in and help him with Josie and the Pussycats, and then we did Sigmund and the Sea Monsters and some other of those kind of Saturday morning shows. So that was the Danny Jansen, which the period was the first half of the 70s, and the second half of the 70s was when I went out with Tommy, repaired with Tommy and Mickey Dolenz and Davy Jones, and became Dolenz Jones, Boyce and Hart.
Right.
Toured for 2 years.
You were the first artist to play Thailand?
Yeah, we did a Southeast Asian tour. After a couple of weeks in Japan, we went to not only Bangkok, but Taipei and Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and Singapore. Some places I never would have seen. It was really a wonderful trip, and it's a wonderful 2 years actually, because Mickey and Davey and Tommy and I, of course, knew each other well from working with them in the studio.
Right.
But this was 2 years when we were actually on the road together, and it was just the camaraderie and the lack of pressure, because we were all off the hot seat. All we had to do, hardly any rehearsing. We we did Boyce and Hart songs, we did Monkee songs, and we knew them all, so we just got on stage and messed around and had fun.
Who was the band? Was it, again, Candy Store Prophets, or was it?
No, we asked Keith Allison, who was Tommy and I had been friends with Keith for 10 years, and once Where the Action Is went off the air, he became one of the Raiders, Paul Revere and the Raiders.
Oh, Paul Revere and the Raiders, yeah.
So this was just
But you had a hit with them with words, right? Yeah.
They did Stepping Stone.
Stepping Stone, yeah.
We actually wrote Stepping Stone for them, and they recorded it but didn't release it as a single. So when we got the Monkees project, we did it again.
Oh, so but they did words too, didn't they?
No, a few other groups did words. I can't remember who they were. I'm not aware of the Raiders doing it.
No. You also worked with... Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me?
No, we got Keith to put a really tight band together, and he was our musical director for those 2 years of touring.
So cool. It's it's an interesting time too, because I'm sure you all these hits were being played out, and you're playing it to audiences that had never seen stuff like this in their country before. So it was very, very cool on so many levels.
It's unexpected, but when you think about the fact that they were watching the Monkees the same time everybody else was around the world, the TV show went into all these countries. So you have fans in very unexpected places, and that was the epitome of proof when we went out to these far-flung Southeast Asian countries, and the fans were still there waiting.
Now you worked with the New Edition, LaToya Jackson, and Robbie Neville.
That was the third main writer I had. His name was Dick Eastman, and he was signed to MCA Music as a writer. Mm-hmm. And he and I began to write a lot and produce together, and so we did those records for New Edition, 5 songs and one of their singles, and produced and wrote, and we did the Robbie Neville song, which we wrote with Robbie, and was his follow-up to
C'est La Vie.
C'est La Vie,
yeah.
Dominoes was our song.
Because that was the C'est La Vie was a huge hit for him.
Yes, it was.
And I was just reading here, it says, according to the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll, Boyce and Hart wrote more than 300 songs and sold more than 42 million records as a partnership. Wow.
That Rolling Stone thing came out about 35 or 40 years ago. So that was the estimate then. So
we don't know what it is. I mean, it's a lot more now.
A lot more. When Rhino Records purchased the name The Monkees and all of the master records in about 80, 89, I guess it was, something like that, or 88, they wanted to have all of those hits certified by the Recording Industry Association of America, which certifies gold and platinum records, and they had not done so back in the day. They didn't even have platinum in those days.
Right.
So there were no records. So Howard Bronson of Rhino called me and he said, "Do you have any statements from those days?" And I said, "Yes, I do, in my attic." So I pulled out all my statements from the original days, and I gave it to the association which certified all those records.
Oh,
so
wow.
That brought it way up, and then, of course, since then, the figure that we're as close as we can figure, it's close to 100 million.
Oh, easily. I mean, you got to think. Just Last Train to Clarksville on its own. I mean, how many times a day is that played on a, you know? Yeah. Hey, did you ever hear the version of the Sex Pistols' "Stepping Stone"? And what did you?
I didn't hear it at the time, but I heard it a few years later. I was in a record executive's office. He said, "Did you ever hear it?" I said, "No," and he sent it over, and I was blown away. It was when I was doing research for psychedelic bubblegum, I found that there was something like 22, besides the Sex Pistols, something like 22 other punk rock bands that recorded that song.
Yeah, it's a very popular song for people to. You know, it's just a killer chord progression. You know, you guys, and now you also a documentary of Boyce and Hart documentary. It's the guys who wrote them. That's something we didn't mention. Talk a little bit about that, about the documentary, which is really cool, by the way.
It's a good documentary. It was an idea that was pitched to me by Andrew Sandoval, who probably the foremost '60s historian and. Mm-hmm. And he's producing the Monkees concerts this summer. They'll be out all summer celebrating the 50th anniversary.
Oh, so cool.
All over the country. Andrew and Rachel Lichtman, who's the director of the piece, and it came out very nice, but it has not been funded to the point where they could license the songs and the TV clips. But what's different about it is there's no talking heads. You don't see any old guys talking. You hear they interviewed Mickey and Davey. Not Davey, I'm sorry. They interviewed Mickey and Peter and Michael. They all did voiceovers talking about Boyce and Hart, and also Kim Fowley and Keith Allison. And but for the first time, I turned over all of my home movies. I had a 16-millimeter camera during the day. So there's all that actual footage where you're watching things happen and footage that nobody else has seen before. So they came out very nice. And, of course, the guys who wrote them is a throwback to 1977, 76, when Dolenz Jones, Boyce and Hart didn't have the money to license the name the Monkees. We couldn't call ourselves the Monkees or the New Monkees or anything. So we went out as Dolenz Jones, Boyce and Hart, the great golden hits of the Monkees show, starring the guys who sang them and the guys who wrote them.
The guys who wrote them, exactly.
So we were the guys who wrote them.
So you had a long career, and here you are now. You've got I guess you say a new record, but it's technically an old record. And you're still. Are you still writing music? I mean, because I would think as a songwriter, you just don't stop.
Well, it took a long time to write my book. I worked with a co-writer that I've known for decades, and
Psychedelic Bubblegum, by the way.
Psychedelic Bubblegum. Psychedelic Bubblegum, Boyce and Hart, the Monkees, and Turning Mayhem into Miracles, because it's a book about my life and my spiritual journey as well. But all the stories are in there, and all the music is in there. So that took a long time, and the music business is so different today. I only write now if somebody gives me a commission to write. I don't write on spec, but somebody says, if a movie composer calls and says I need a lyric for this movie theme, then I'll do that, something like that.
But nothing. How did you come up with the title? It's it's a perfect title.
Which one?
Psychedelic Bubblegums.
Oh, well, my writing partner, who owns an ad agency and that's his right down his alley, is writing catchy phrases and so on, and he was very helpful in the book.
This is Glenn Ballantine?
Glenn Ballantine.
Ballantine,
he came up with it. We had thrown around a whole lot of other titles. I Want to Be Free was going to be the title, and a whole bunch of other things. And coming around to the time when we actually had to pick a title, he threw that out one day, and I said, oh, my God. People are going to say, what does that mean, you know? And it's going to get somebody's attention, and it did, and it does. And we were on the Amazon, we were number one on the Amazon pop biography list for weeks.
Congratulations.
And, with the wonderful response of the Monkee fans and others I've known over the years, it was just incredible. And so we're coming up to the 25th will be the 1-year anniversary of the release, and I'm going to do another little relaunch and try to get it out to people who haven't heard of it or seen it.
Oh, that's right, because it came out last year in May. That's right, yeah.
May 25th.
So, yeah, that'll be will it be any extra stuff or just the same, just re-release?
It'll be a re-release, but I'm going to do some posts on my Facebook page with maybe some little extra stuff. And
oh, cool.
Embellishments and so on.
You heard it here first, folks. That's right. Well, Bobby, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Bob's Radio Cafeteria. I love talking to people behind the scenes. A lot of the people I interview are people that maybe aren't the biggest household names, but they had such an important part in pop culture history. And Bobby, you are certainly one of the, especially for 60s music. I mean, you co-wrote Last Train to Clarksville. I mean, that doesn't get any bigger than that in the 60s music, and it's such an honor to talk to you, and I'm so glad to see that you get the respect and adulation that you deserve, because you and Tommy, you put so much into pop culture. And as a pop culture junkie, especially 60s and 70s, I think it's really cool.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words. You know, it's very gratifying to see 50 years later that people are still enjoying the music. And as you say, the kind of late coming appreciation of, I did a I did a show back east 3 weekends ago with Mickey Dolenz and Peter Tork, and we were on stage together and did 4 or 5 Boyce and Hart Monkee songs. And
cool.
And in that show, Mickey said such beautiful things about how people didn't realize that besides writing most of the hits, that Boyce and Hart had actually created the sound of the Monkees, because he said as producers, when they produce the songs, that's what a producer does, is they figure it out what this is going to sound like and what it's going to look like. So it's so nice to see people this much later still honoring the work, and I couldn't be more appreciative and feel more blessed.
You really are blessed. You're a talented man, and it's an honor to have you on Bob's Radio Cafeteria. And before we wrap up, tell people again where they can find you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, go on my Facebook page, Bobby Hart. The book has its own Facebook page. It's Psychedelic Bubblegum. Mm-hmm. And my website is bobbyhart.com. And
we'll be re-releasing Psychedelic Bubblegum in, 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. On the 25th of actually, the new Monkee album comes out on the 28th, and the anniversary of my book will be the 25th. So it'll be a good week.
Oh, it's going to be a great week, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of cross promotion too. Believe me, I can see that you guys will all be promoting each other, and that's another cool thing, is to see how you guys still stay friends all these years. You know,
it's actually been even sweeter, lately, because we are seeing each other more, not only professionally, but Mickey will call for his birthday, and it's cool to get to know the guys on a deeper level, and there's a mutual appreciation going back and forth.
Well, you got mutual appreciation right here, so I just wanted to tell you right there. So from me, it'll be single appreciation. But thank you again, Bobby. Thank you so much for being on Bob's Radio Cafeteria. It was a pleasure and an honor, and thank you. And I hope good luck on the re-release of the book, and I'll certainly have the interview out to you in the next day or so you can listen back and all that.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It was really fun.
Oh, thank you, Bobby. Well, you've been listening to Bob's Radio Cafeteria. Again, you can find me Facebook.com/Bob's Radio Cafeteria, YouTube.com/The Clarences, and, of course, on Ralph Tycho's Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, where you can see all his great shows, or my good friend Fred Lazarus with his show Durfcast. This is Bob's Radio Cafeteria. See you later. Bye.